channel, and welcome if this is your very first time here. Today's fact video topic is NASA. Now, we've all heard of NASA. We've seen it featured in movies, TV shows, and things of that nature. But what do most of us know about NASA? Well, I have to admit, in my case, very little. But hopefully that's all about to change today through the making of this video. So without further ado, it's time to lay back, relax, and let yourself drift away as I whisper facts about NASA. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, shortened to NASA, is an independent agency of the US federal government responsible for the civilian space program, as well as aeronautics and space research. NASA was established in 1958, succeeding the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, known as the NACA. The new agency was to have a distinctly civilian orientation, encouraging peaceful applications in space science. Since its establishment, most US space exploration efforts have been led by NASA, including the Apollo moon landing missions, the Skylab space station, and later the Space Shuttle. NASA supports the International Space Station and is overseeing the development of the Orion spacecraft, the Space Launch System, commercial crew vehicles, and the planned Lunar Gateway space station. The agency is also responsible for the Launch Services Program, which provides oversight of launch operations and countdown management for uncrewed NASA launches. Alright, so NASA was established in 1958, which is a little later than I would have imagined. And before that there was the NACA, which I have to admit I have never heard of. So NASA were established, and really that was when things started to gain momentum in terms of the moon missions. First sending up orbiters before finally stepping on the moon in July 1969. And at that time, NASA were in competition with the Soviet space program, which was known as the Space Race, which you may have heard of. And that was to see who could set foot on the surface of the moon for the first time, amongst other advances as well. And NASA won the race, which is probably the fact most of us already know, that Neil Armstrong was the first human to ever set foot on the surface of the moon in 1969. NASA's science is focused on better understanding Earth through the Earth Observing System, exploring bodies throughout the solar system with advanced robotic spacecraft such as New Horizons, and researching astrophysics topics such as the Big Bang through the great observatories and associated programs. NASA's headquarters are located in Washington, D.C., and they have an annual budget of $21.5 billion as of 2019. Wow, that is an astonishing amount of money. I probably missions into space to explore the solar system and launch communication satellites. And I have a list here of the most famous NASA space missions from its inception to the present day. So, in 1961, we had Freedom 7, which was the first space launch, which launched the first American into space, who was Alan Shepard. That's not a name I'm familiar with, so that's a pretty cool fact to learn here today. The first American, or the first person in space, was called Alan Shepard. In 1968, we had the Apollo 8 mission. This spacecraft had a mission to orbit the moon. And then in 1969, we had the Apollo 11 mission, which was the most famous mission of all, in which man stepped on the moon for the very first time, as previously mentioned. After that, we had 5 more successful manned moon landings between 1969 and 1972. In 1970, we had the Apollo 13 mission, which had an oxygen tank malfunction. NASA launched a rescue mission and the crew returned safely to Earth. And of course, this is one of the other most well-known missions due to the feature film starring Tom Hanks of the same name, Apollo 13, which I have to admit I've never actually seen in full. I've seen some video clips of it, but not the full movie. But through making this video, I'm actually really quite keen on seeing that movie now, so maybe I'll look that up at some point in the near future. In 1972, we had Pioneer 10, which was an unmanned mission to the solar system. In 1972 as well, we had NASA's first launch of the Space Shuttle. And in 1977, we had the launch of the Voyager missions. Yeah, I read about the Voyagers a while back, and they're so fascinating. So basically, they are 2 interstellar probes, I believe they're called, and they were sent into the far reaches of space and beyond, never to return, exploring our galaxy and far beyond that. It's unbelievable, really, and to this day they still transmit data back to Earth, even though they are, I think, billions of miles away at this stage. And what I find most fascinating about the Voyagers is that they both contain a golden record, which you may or may not know, and these records contain images of Earth and humans just in the event that any faraway alien beings or civilization of sorts come into contact with either of the Voyagers. I know it's a stretch, but I just love the idea. You can actually see the images and sounds contained on those records on a video here on YouTube, so yeah, it's well worth looking up. So moving on from the Voyagers, in 1986 we had the Challenger launch. 73 seconds from launch, the shuttle exploded, killing all of the crew. And this is another mission I'm familiar with. I believe it was the first mission that attempted to send a civilian into space who was a school teacher. So the launch grew huge attention, and it was on TV, I believe, and lots of school kids were watching it live at the time, and people all over America as well, no doubt. And then it exploded moments after launching. And again, there's actually a video of the event on YouTube. It's quite amazing to see. It's such a terrible tragedy that happened. And moving on from that, in 1990, we had the Hubble telescope launched from Discovery to photograph the stars in detail. In 1996, we had the Pathfinder mission, a mission launched to Mars to gather data of the planet's surface. In 1998, we had the International Space Station, which is a joint venture between 5 participating space agencies. And this actually quite surprised me when I read it. 1998 was the first year the International Space Station was launched completely. So yeah, I thought it was much earlier than that, so that's quite a surprising fact. In 2003, we had the Mars rovers Spirit and Opportunity launched to Mars in the search for water. And in 2012, we have the Mars Curiosity rover launched to explore possible life on Mars. So yeah, that's a sort of quick run through some of the most important and well-known NASA missions through the years. Landsat was the series of revolutionary satellites that were first launched in 1972 for the purpose of systematically photographing the surface of the Earth from space. Managers at NASA claimed that there was a 1 in 100,000 chance of a catastrophic failure aboard the Challenger spacecraft. But Richard Feynman, a theoretical physicist, discovered that NASA's engineers estimated the chance of a catastrophe to be closer to 1 in 200. Yeah, and I briefly touched on this a few minutes ago about the Challenger shuttle explosion. That is unbelievable that it was allowed to launch with those kinds of odds. It's such a shame that such a high profile launch ended in catastrophe for the astronauts and their families. But those odds are absolutely unbelievable. Closer to 1 in 200. It's amazing that it was allowed to launch. And I believe when it did launch, it was a very cold morning in Florida, and the weather played a part in the disaster. I'm not exactly sure of the details, but I think the engineers were so sure, almost certain that it was going to explode, and for a moment they actually thought that they had got away with it, and the launch was successful, and then, as we all know, it did explode. In 1999, NASA lost an orbiter as one half of the engineers were using metric measurements and the other was using imperial. The inventor of the Super Soaker squirt gun was a NASA scientist who also helped in developing the stealth bomber for US Air Force and the Galileo mission to Jupiter for NASA. That's a really amusing fact. I had a Super Soaker water gun when I was a kid. I actually mentioned this in another video recently. I'm not sure which one it was, but having water fights in the summertime in the street as a child, it doesn't get any better than that, really. So yeah, it's quite a fun fact. People can get paid around $9,000 per month by NASA to lie in bed for every minute of the day for up to 70 days. They then monitor these volunteers to perfect methods for astronauts into space. Well, where can I sign up for that? NASA, flight simulator expert Dick Day, who secretly slipped his application into the pile with the rest. Oh my goodness, talk about a history-defining moment. That is unbelievable. It's amazing how often fate intervenes and really changes the course of history. And this is one of those moments, I guess. Had it not been for his friend, he never would have got the job or been the first man to walk on the moon. So yeah, that is an amazing fact. I think that's my most favourite fact so far of the video. The logos of the organisation are known as the meatball and worm. The worm was to represent the new and aerodynamic. Everyone hated it and they went back to the meatball. NASA has discovered a water world planet about 40 light years away from Earth that might contain exotic materials such as hot ice and superfluid water. NASA often shows the Hollywood movie Armageddon as part of its management training program, and then asks its new staff to identify as many scientific inaccuracies as they can. There are at least 168 of them. I love Armageddon. It's one of my favourite space movies. It's been a while since I've seen it, actually, so I'm trying to think of some possible inaccuracies, even though I'm not a NASA employee, obviously. But I'm sure some of them would stand out even to the average person. So let's see. Well, I doubt it's possible for a shuttle to land on an asteroid. Yeah, there's no way that's possible. So that's one. Okay, so 167 to go. Just kidding. But yeah, that's a pretty cool fact, and no doubt it would be a fun task to undertake. All you need is your pen, your paper, some popcorn, and you're good to go. 12 people have walked on the moon, all of them as part of the Apollo program. All of the crewed Apollo lunar landings took place between July 1969 and December 1972. Most astronauts at that time came from the military services and were considered to be on active duty during their NASA service. NASA invented invisible braces, scratch-resistant lenses, and much more. It is currently not known exactly who made the Apollo 11 moon flag. It was either one of the 3 purchased by NASA secretaries on a lunch break, or ordered from a government catalogue for $5.50. NASA would not confirm the manufacturer. Yeah, and I believe the flag was modified because if it just hung down normally, you wouldn't see it due to the fact that there is no wind on the moon. So yeah, it was modified so that it sort of hung out to the side at a kind of 90-degree inverted angle so that you could see the flag of the USA. NASA plans to build a radio telescope on the far side of the moon by the 2030s. It takes NASA and Voyager 1 approximately 32 hours to communicate with each other with a bandwidth of 115.2 kilobits per second. Wow, yeah, so I mentioned the Voyager probes a little earlier and how far away they are from Earth right now, so it takes 32 hours to communicate with them. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Columbia was NASA's first space shuttle. On February the 1st, 2003, its 28th mission, it crumbled into pieces over Texas whilst on re-entry. Wow, I hope there was nobody in that shuttle. No, I don't believe there was. So yeah, it was a really old shuttle by that point, and unfortunately it crumbled during the re-entry to Earth. NASA's vehicle assembly building is so huge it needs about 10,000 tons of air conditioning equipment to prevent rain clouds from forming inside on humid days. There is a large area over Brazil where the Earth's magnetic field has weakened. This anomaly is called South Atlantic Anomaly. It is so large that NASA powers down its satellites when passing over it. NASA announced that alongside the National Nuclear Security Administration, they are working on plans to possibly destroy hazardous asteroids with nuclear weapons. During the 1960s, NASA astronauts received a new Corvette of their choice each year for just $1. Well, I'm sure back in those days the astronauts were treated like royalty. I must admit I've never actually seen an interview with Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin, etc., which I think would be pretty cool to hear their thoughts on the moon landing and the Apollo 11 mission. NASA's slogan is to explore the universe and search for life, to inspire the next generation of explorers as only NASA can. As of January 2016, visitors of the Space Center Houston will be greeted by a life-sized replica of the Space Shuttle, known as Independence, on a NASA 905 shuttle carrier aircraft. The center is available to hire. Donations to U.S. federal agencies are tax deductible, and you can donate money directly to NASA. Area code for Kennedy Space Center in Florida and its surrounding areas is 321, given for its pronunciation resembling the countdown before liftoff. NASA has a tradition of playing a wake-up call for astronauts. These are usually songs such as What a Wonderful World, but they have also included other things such as a voice message from Patrick Stewart announcing the voyage of the Space Shuttle Atlantis. My granny actually really loved that song, What a Wonderful World, and I remember singing it when I was a kid. Louis Armstrong, I believe it was, and he just had one of those very distinctive voices. So yeah, it's one of my good memories of my granny from childhood. In order for NASA to recognize you as an astronaut, you must travel higher than 50 miles from the Earth's surface. In NASA's last astronaut recruitment intake for 8 positions, there were 6,000 applications. Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. It must be one of the most exactly sure how that works, to be honest. It's quite a strange one there. So they believe that they owned Mars and they inherited it from ancestors 3,000 years ago. And they actually won their case. They managed to sue NASA for trespassing. That is so bizarre. NASA has its own radio station called Third Rock Radio, which plays rock, indie, alternative music with news items and mission updates embedded throughout. Eileen M. Collins was the first female commander of the Space Shuttle. She and her crew launched aboard Space Shuttle Columbia on the STS-93 mission in July 1999. A US flag that went on 2 separate moon missions hangs in NASA's mission control room. NASA ran a competition among elementary and secondary school students to name a new shuttle. Then President George H.W. Bush announced the winner, Endeavour, in May 1989. The famous Apollo astronauts could not qualify for life insurance because of the nature of their work, so they signed autographs before going into space. If anything went wrong, they hoped that the autographs would gain enough value to care for their families. Yeah, so this is something we haven't yet touched on, and it's how scared the men and the women who go into space must actually be. They must know that there's a chance they may never return, so I think it would really take nerves of steel to do that. So yeah, it's pretty amazing what they do to explore different places in space, and basically they're risking their lives in the name of science. NASA actually has an Office of Planetary Protection in case life is found on another planet. As mentioned, NASA's headquarters are in Washington, D.C., but it also has 9 centers scattered all over the U.S., including the Test and Research Facilities and the Jet Propulsion Lab. NASA is estimated to have sent over 2,200 animals into space, including insects, pigs, monkeys, rats, rabbits, and spiders. 2,000 were sent on one mission, STS-90, in 1998. In 2006, NASA had to get hold of and restore copies of the original moon landing from CBS and the Johnson Space Center after admitting to accidentally recording over their own tape recordings. That is so funny. This reminds me of when I was young and someone would tape over one of my videos. Back in the day when we had VHS tapes, of course. I think I'm showing my age here, but before DVDs for any young people watching, we had something called VHS tapes, and you may have seen them, but you could record things from the TV on them, and all too often someone would tape over something of yours which would cause an argument. But those days are long gone now. It's all DVDs and smart TVs with Netflix and Amazon Prime, etc. these days. Armalcolite is a cyanide pills in case they could not return back to Earth. Oh wow, that's quite a morbid fact there. So they have these pills just in case there's no way out, as a way to avoid any suffering, I guess. On Wednesday, the 1st of June 2016, NASA broadcasted a chat between Mark Zuckerberg and 3 astronauts aboard the International Space Station on their Facebook page. Each Space Shuttle astronaut is allocated 3.8 pounds of food per day, including the 1 pound of packaging. Foods are individually packaged and stowed for easy handling in the zero gravity of space. All food is pre-cooked or processed, so it requires no refrigeration and is either ready to eat or can be prepared simply by adding water or by heating. The only exceptions are the fresh fruit and vegetables stowed in the fresh food locker. NASA almost named part of the International Space Station Serenity after the ship in Firefly, but instead settled with its synonym Tranquility. And finally, the Voyager 1 probe took 33 years to reach the edge of the solar system in 2010. And I believe you can actually look up the progress of the 2 Voyager missions on NASA website, and it has all kinds of facts and figures about them. But yeah, if you've never seen the golden records that are attached to each probe, as I mentioned earlier, I highly recommend you check that video out on YouTube if you're interested in space travel and this sort of topic area. It's well worth seeing. Well guys, that concludes another Whisper Facts episode. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, if you did enjoy it, be sure to hit the like button before you go. Consider subscribing if you're new around here, as it really helps the channel growth, and I'll bring you plenty more fact videos like this one in the near future. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, rest easy, sleep well, and I hope to see you again very soon.